Hello everyone, welcome to Zaref Game Dev, and in this video we are going to create the MrFlap game in Unity. And this game is somewhat like the Flappy Bird, but the play area is just the single screen and it rotates around the screen, and the obstacles are like spawned at the spokes of the circle. So we are going to create this game in Unity, and as you can see, a new Unity project opened up, and in this project I've deleted the main scene and we have added the gameplay scene. And let's reset the size, and let's set the camera color to white. Now I've created a couple of folders. The one is for the prefabs, the next one's for the resources, and there's the scenes folder in which we have created the main menu, and there's the main menu script. And after that, let's first add the resources into our scene. So let's go into the folder, and I'm going to bring every resources in our resources folder. Now it's going to import the resources, and we'll wait a little bit till it imports. So as you can see, there are all the images and the sounds. So let's first reset every image resolution to 128, and afterwards we'll rescale everything to something else. So it automatically rescales it. Now for the bird, it's going to be a multiple type, and inside our sprite editor we are going to slice it automatically, and let's apply. So it's just going to take this part of our screen, and then we have our circle which is going to be 128, and let's change the main to 100 because we are going to use it afterwards, and the pixel will be 1 because it's a single pixel. And let's start creating our UI. So as you can see, we have the main camera in the scene, and if you are using older Unity version, so the view may be different. You may have this panel here, and but everything is almost the same. And I'm using the latest Unity, the long time support version, which is the 2021-3. And let's start creating our scene. So the first thing we are going to create is our background, so which is just a huge circle. And in the trailer, as you may have seen, uh, how it's going to be. So let's just create BG. And for the image, we are going to use the circle image. Now let's resize this image. So it's going to be positioned at 0, -1000, and its width and height is going to be 2000 by 1500, and the sprite is going to be the circle sprite. Now for the color, we are going to use 19900, and that's how our background is going to look. Now let's also add one more image, and this one image we are just going to call him, it doesn't matter what we call it, and we'll rename this not rename, we'll just resize this to 1200 so it's higher, and we are going to rescale it to 384 by 296. So 296 or maybe 294, doesn't matter. So that's how our background is going to look. And after having our background, we are going to add the start button. So let's create a new UI, and it's just a default button. So I think legacy. Okay, so they just put everything inside the legacy. Now let's add the button, and I think we'll rename it to start. And for the size, let's first not have a color, and the position for the button we are going to use negative 448, and its size is going to be 1,500. And let's also set up our canvas, so let's add as a screen space camera, and we'll set it to scale with screen size, where the X scale is 1080 and the Y scale is 1920, and we'll set the match width and height to 0.5. So just the UI is going to take much time, everything else is going to be easier. And let's rename it to text, and it's just going to say start. Let's increase the size to 120, make it bold, position already at the center, and we are just going to have the color to be the white one. So this is just the start button. Now after having a start button, we are going to let's create an image, and this one is going to be for the mode, and let's position it to the top, negative 64, and the width we are going to use 1080 by 128, and for the sprite we are just going to use the pixel sprite. Now if we set this color to blue, as you can see, it's on the top. Now after having this mode selector, I'm just using this mode, so if you want to have the mode changed, we are going to let's just set up the UI for now, because that's how it looked when we created it. Now let's add an image, and we are going to call normal image, and it's going to be 540 by 128, and we'll position it negative 270, and this one color is going to be transparent. But inside this normal image we are going to add a text, and mm, the text is just going to say normal, and bold 128, and let's rescale this image to 540. Okay, 128 minus 32, 96. So 96 looks good enough. Now let's duplicate this normal, and we are going to call it hardcore, and instead of negative 100 and 270, we are going to position at positive 100 and 270, and for this color we are going to use the red color, and let's decrease this don't know which color it was, but let's have it a color of decrease saturation a little bit, increase this and that, and it should look good enough. Now for the text we are going to call it hard. hmm. Let's just have it as hard, because it doesn't matter much. Now after having that, for the UI we are again going to create three more buttons, and these buttons are going to be similar. So let's create an image, and this one is for the center one, and let's call this settings, and the buttons are also going to have a button component attached to it. Let's set the color tint to none, and as you can see the button is directly at the center, so let's position it. Mm, mm, Negative 192, and the position Y we are going to position at negative 832. So mode start BG. So that's where our button is, and we are going to rescale it to 128 by 128, and let's set the image to circle. And the color, I don't think we need to change it. Now duplicate the settings 2 more times, and the next one we are just going for the info, and the last one, or the second one, we are just going to call quit. Now settings, the first one, let's add the info at the center, and the position is going to be 0, and similarly the quit position is going to be positive 192. And after that, let's attach an image component to all three of them, and I think yep, it attached to all three. Now for the first image, which is the settings image, we are going to use the settings, and we'll set the color to black. Mm, 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 mm. Mm, mm, mm. And similarly, we'll set up our info and color to black, and afterwards we'll change the color, but for now let's just set up our close, and we'll set the color to red. And similarly for the settings, that black should be more than enough, and for the info, let's change the color to whatever main was, and that should wait for the default settings which we are seeing. And it's also going to have one more, and these are for the games played, and it's just going to be an image. And the first one is going to be for the games played, and its position, I think let's set it at the top center, and let's reposition it at negative 384 and negative 288. And let's rescale it, and for the sprite we are going to use our default sprite, rescale it to 128 by 128, and after that we are going to attach a text mesh pro component to it. So let's attach a text mesh pro, and it's I think it won't need anything. Now let's increase the size to somewhat like 500 by 128. Position is going to be from the right, and let's make it 512 and 256. And as you can see, it's pretty much large. So let's change it to won't matter. So here's the text. Let's make it bold and increase the font size to 128. And for now, we'll just use 4 zeros, and the alignment is going to be left. And the color, let's set it to the gray color, and we'll need a little bit more spacing, so 288. And afterwards it has the option for the 4. Let's duplicate this games played, and we'll rename it as high score, and let's change the position x to positive. And similarly for the text, anchor is going to be left, and it's going to be negative 288, or anchor is left. What happen if we set it to 0? Alignment right. 288 negative, and this should be fine. And let's decrease one more zero so it doesn't look much bad, and there's not gonna be 4-digit high score. So let's change this color sprite to be the phase 2, and similarly for the text we are going to change the color to the blue one. So the right one's going to be showing the high score, and the left one's going to be showing the games played. Now after having both our uh, let's attach a settings menu. So for the settings menu We are just going to create a new UI, and let's create an image. And for this image, we are just going to call it settings open. And I don't think it will need an image component, so let's just remove it. And for the size, we are just going to use 1024 by 320, and position is going to be the center. Let's make it -112, and that's where our settings is. Now inside our settings, let's create an UI, and it's going to be image. And for this image, we are just going to call the sound. Let's set the sprite to pixel, and color, let's set it to the blue one, but for the saturation we'll pull it down to around 30, so it looks bright but not bright enough. And let's rescale it to 256 by 160 by 160. Hmm, hmm, hmm. Let's add just 256. And for the position, we are just going to use -160. And it also needs a button component attached, and color tint none, and we'll attach the functions later. And the next one's going to be for the music. And for the music, it's going to be +160. Now let's create an image, and this one's for the overlay, and it's going to stretch the whole. Let's make it black, opacity down to around 30, so it looks darker. And similarly, we'll add an overlay to our music. Have it uh, set the opacity down to 30. And inside our music, we'll add one more image, and this image is going to be 160 by 160. And for the image, we are going to use the sound, which is the sound. And similarly, for the music, we'll add an image, and let's have it call image. And for this, we are going to use our music. So these are just going to show if the music is on or off, and if it is on, we'll disable the overlay so it turns brighter. Now we have our settings open. We'll duplicate the settings and we'll have it as a parent of settings open because it's similar, and we'll just call it settings close. So if we click it again, it's just going to close the settings, and anchor is perfectly set up. Now that was it for our main menu UI. Now let's create the managers. So inside our UI, let's create empty, and we'll call it main menu manager, and we'll attach our main menu manager script to it. So we have our main menu manager, and afterwards let's have the settings open hidden, and we'll start editing our script. So let's open our main menu manager script, and I'll change to Visual Studio. So there's nothing much going on. There's the start and the update function. Let's delete that first, and we'll start editing our main menu manager. So let's create a serialize field, and the first we are going to have a private settings panel, which is going to show and the sound overlay and the music overlay. And after that, private tm pro text, and we are going to have, we won't need collections, So here we are going to have for the game split text, and the next one is going to be for the high score text. Now after having that, let's have our awake, and we're going to set settings panel dot set active to false, and the game split text dot text is going to be player prefs dot hash key, and the key we are going to need is hmm, hmm, hmm. We'll need to create the constants first. Dot uh, uh, we'll need to create the constants. So I'll just copy paste all of the constants, and they are just pretty much the variables I'm going to use. So let's create a constant script first. And let me copy paste our constant script. So it's just going to have all the variable names. So if we go inside our Visual Studio, should have the constant script. Let's remove everything, and that is our constants. So as you can see, it contains all the string names and stored as a string variables. So these are all the constants. And for the main menu manager, we are going to have constants dot save data dot games played. If it has it, then we're going to get the int, and constants dot save data dot games played dot to string. So after having our game split text, we'll just copy it, and the next text is going to be the high score text, and here we'll set the high score. Similarly, we'll get the high score, and this should set up our high score and our uh, game split. So let's create the public function. So the first one is for the game quit, and inside our game quit, we are just going to call the application dot quit. And if we are inside our Unity editor, we'll call Unity editor dot editor application dot is playing to false, and we'll add the end if. So that is the game quit function, and similarly, let's create the game start function, and it's just going to load the scene. So Unity engine dot scene management dot scene manager dot load scene, and the scene name is the gameplay scene, GAMEPLAY. So and let's create the public void open settings, and inside our open settings we are just going to set the settings panel dot set active to true, and let's create a private void refresh settings. So and it's going to set up the settings. So refresh settings, and inside our refresh settings, what we are going to do is temp bool is going to be player prefs dot hash key, and we are going to get the constants dot settings, and the first one, let's set up our music. So if it has the music, then we are going to get the music. Player prefs dot get int constants dot settings music, Else, what we are going to do is we'll just set it to 1, and after that we'll check if it is 0. So if it is 0, that means our music is turned off, and we'll do sound overlay dot set active to the temporary bool, and music overlay dot set active to the temporary bool, and we'll just copy this whole code, and instead of having bool we are going to have setting sound, and not sound overlay. Here it's going to be the music overlay, and here is going to be our sound overlay. So this one is going to refresh the settings. Now let's create functions to toggle it off, and let's also create for the close settings. So inside our close settings we are just going to close our settings panel, and last we have the two toggle options. So public void toggle music, and inside our toggle music let's first get the so it's going to get our value, and if it is not, then we are just going to set to true, and the temp is equals to, if temp is 0 then we'll set to 1, else we'll set to 0. Or maybe if temp is 1, so if it is on, doesn't matter. However, we are just going to flip the temp, and afterwards we'll use player prefs dot set int, and we are going to set the music to our temp, and afterwards we'll refresh the settings so it clears it up, and we'll copy the whole toggle music and rename it to toggle sound. Now instead of having the key to be settings music, we'll use settings sound, and similarly we are going to use settings sound. So that should be it for all the code. Now let's set it up in our Unity editor. So let's go inside Unity, and the first thing we'll need to do is add our current scene, and we'll also need to create a new scene. So let's create a new scene, and we'll save this scene as the gameplay, and let's have it as it is, and let's go inside our main menu scene, and let's attach every button functionality. So for the first button, which is the on click, and we are going to add the main menu manager, and inside our main menu manager, which is the start, we are going to use the game start. Similarly for the quit, inside our mode it does not have anything, but it doesn't matter, and let's add the settings, and inside our settings let's use open settings, and info doesn't have anything. Inside our quit, we are going to use the game quit function, and games played and settings open. Inside our settings open, for the sound, music, and the settings close, let's first add our main menu manager, and let's first do our sound. So it's going to be the toggle sound. The next one is going to be the toggle music, And for our settings close, we are going to use the close settings. Now let's hit play. Before hitting play, we need to reference everything. So this one's the settings panel. And for the sound overlay, we have the game object. Similarly, for the music overlay, the games played text and the high score text. Now, if everything's working correctly, we should have our basic settings. Uh, the toggle is also working correctly and it is fine. And for the quit, as you can see, we are able to quit the game. And finally, when we start, we need to add that to the scene. So that was for the basic UI. Now for our, let's go inside our gameplay scene and let's add it to the current build and we'll start editing our gameplay. So for the color, doesn't matter, let's have it white. And the size is going to be 9.6 because the width we are going to use is height 19.2 and its half is 9.6. And now it is loaded. Let's start creating the basic UI. Now, first of all, what should we create? Let's create our start, which is going to stretch on the whole screen. So let's go into gameplay, UI, and not an image. Yeah, I will need an image which is going to be the start. Stretch the whole screen for this sprite. Mm, doesn't matter. Let's have it black. Set the transparency to 0, and we'll just attach a button component. And for the sprite, let's just use our pixel sprite, and that's the start. Now let's set up our canvas. So let's have it screen space camera, add the main camera and scale with screen size 1080 by 1920 and match width and height to 0.5. Numlock is off. So the camera is also set up. Now we'll need a game manager script. So and also an event manager script. And let's also create the spawn manager script. And on top of that, we'll just add managers. So 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, and let's reset everything's transform, and we'll attach our all three managers below. Now let's add our background. So it's going to be an image which we have already created, but for the color we are going to manually set it up. So that's our background. It also needs a polygon collider 2D, and the collider is already set up. We'll go into the project settings, and as you can see, here is the project settings. We'll change the fixed time steps to 0.005, and let's close this tab. And instead of main, we are just going to call it background. Can't rename it. So it already has the collider. Now let's create one more, and it's going to be a 2D sprite, and let's just add the circle, and its color is the white or the bluish, and we'll just call it circle, and it will also need a circle collider 2D. And after that, let's create our basic UI. So in our canvas we added our start, and inside our circle we are going to, maybe we should just put it outside. So let's create a UI and empty, and we'll just call it score, and let's attach a text mesh pro text component, and let's change its size to 2 cross 2. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Font size to auto size 12 to 16. Color is white. Let's set it as 0. Position to the center. And let's have it 14. Min size 8. So this is going to show our score. Now inside our canvas, let's create an empty. And we are just going to call it end panel. And let's have it stretch the whole screen. Now let's create the first button inside our end panel, which is going to be the restart. For the image, we are going to use the restart image. Let's rescale it to 256 by 256. Position from the center, and we are going to position it at negative bottom 256. And why is it not showing? Okay, okay. Canvas, order in layer to 1. So that's where our image was, and let's rename it to restart. And it will also need a button component attached to it. And we are just going to use it to restart the scene. And let's duplicate the restart, and we'll rename it to quit, or maybe go to main menu. And inside our go to main menu, it's just going to be the decrease size, and 320. Where is our quit? So this one's for the close. Let's duplicate go to main menu, and we'll rename this to share, and we are going to use our share. And it's also going to need two more text mesh pro, and the first one is going to be the end message, and let's have it fail, and let's resize our end message. So it's going to be positioned from the top negative 128, and its width is going to be 1024 by 116. The text is fine. Let's have it only white. Why is it not showing? 160, position towards the center. Anchor needs to be top. And let's make it bold. So as you can see, it's going to show the failed text. Let's duplicate the end message. It's just going to be the high score. And inside our high score, hmm, It's just going to call high score of how much high score do we need? Let's have it some random number, and for the size we are going to use 180. So it looks good enough. Now, after having the UI setup, let's add the game manager, event manager, and the spawn managers scripts. Okay, so only the UI just takes longer to create. Everything else is easy. So let's first create our game manager script. Now have our spawn manager script, and the next script we are going to have is the event manager. And for the event manager, I'm just going to copy paste because it's already what we have used in our previous videos, and it's just almost pretty much similar. So let's go inside our code library and audio manager, constants, event manager. Let's copy our event manager script, and I'm going to paste it inside our event manager. So it should not create any problems. So event manager is complete, and we need to add the functionality for the game manager. So let's have deleted everything. And inside our game manager, it's not having much, but let's create a serialized field. First one's for the private game object and panel and the start button. And let's create one more serialized field, and it's going to be private tm pro dot tm pro text and message text and the high score text. And inside our awake, we are just going to set panel dot set active to false and start button dot set active to true. And afterwards on enable and on disable. Hmm. Why am I resizing it? So let's create the game over function. So private void game over, and it's just going to have a dictionary from string to object, and we'll just call it message. And inside our game over, we are just going to set the end panel dot set active to true. And after that, we'll have the public void game start, and not game start, game restart. And inside our game restart, we'll just use unity engine dot scene manager and dot scene manager dot load scene, and we are going to load the gameplay scene. And public void go to menu. Inside our go to menu, we'll just use unity engine dot scene management dot scene manager dot load scene, and here we are going to use our main menu scene. So we have both the scenes, and afterwards we are going to call the game start, and the first thing we are going to do is start button dot set active to false, and event manager dot trigger event. You can use navigation bar to switch contexts. What the hell did happen? That's for the game start, and I think nothing else will be needed. And on enable, we are just going to use event manager dot start listening. Assembly C sharp not available. What is it saying? You can use navigation bar to switch contexts. And we are going to listen to the game start and the game start. Hmm? 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 Hmm. No, game over. Only the game over was needed. And let's copy this line of code again, and event manager dot stop listening constants dot event names dot game over stop listening. So that should do the trick, and we are just going to add our game restart, game quit, go to menu, and the game start functions. So let's go inside Unity and let's just add all the functions. So we have our game manager, and it does not have a game manager script attached to it. Mm-mm. Let's add the end panel, the start button, and the end message, and the high score text. Now, when we hit play, we don't have the start, and the score text needs to be just 0. Is it bold? No, it's not. Let's have it bold. And similarly, for the start, we are going to attach the game start function, the restart, the game restart function, and the go to main menu will attach the go to main menu function. Go to menu. Now, if we hit play, but the game's not going to end, so we won't be able to see it. But if we hit play, object reference not set to an instance of an object. We also need to attach our event manager, and let's also attach our spawn manager. And now there should be not any problems. So let's hit play, and everything's working fine. And let's go inside our main menu scene and let's save it. Let's go inside our main menu scene and let's hit play. Settings is opening the setting, and now if it start, we are going to our start menu. So that was just the basic UI setup, and in the next video we are going to set up the player movement, and we'll just add the player to the scene. So if you guys watched till now, thank you guys for watching, and see you guys in the next video.